Folks, welcome back. My name is Rudy. Alpha Investments, Cardboard Empire. So today we got a story time video. So one of the top questions asked on that Q&A comment section video was there was a strange interest with a lot of you all wanting to ask me about the 2008 crash in the stock market, real estate, the economy, collectibles, how it related to it. And some of you all just are, I didn't realize how many people are still infatuated with kind of untold Rudy stories of the 2008 era. I'm very surprised a lot of you all even care about that era. That tells me maybe I have an older demographic audience, because I feel like people under the age of 21 or under don't even know what the hell I'm talking about when I talk about the 2008 crash. So, without further ado, you guys asked for more untold stories of the 2008 Rudy's past in story time. So sit back, relax as we journey through the history of the Florida man who turned into Cardboard Man, turned into LOL Ridiculed Man, that turned into legendary biggest empire of Florida man ever. So first, we're going to start with a couple disclaimers and a couple basics about 2008. The things I'm going to mention in this video are very old. We're talking 08, this is 2025. So we're approaching almost 20 years ago, okay? Understand, when I got out of college, my first licensed registered broker, advisor, registered rep, Series 7 job was through a brokerage firm called Waddell & Reed Financial. They were responsible for the flash crash in 2010, I think it was. After being there only like a year, I just didn't like the people. I transferred and I moved to the big boy Merrill Lynch, where I stayed for most of my real career, I guess you could call it that, for 4 to 5 years as a registered rep with a Series 7 and Series 66. So basics, just understand Series 6 is like the entry-level basic. Series 7 is more giving financial legal advice. And then you have the Series 63, Series 65, and the Series 66 financial exams. The Series 66 is called like the Uniform Combined Securities Act exam, I think it was. And the Series 66, if you pass that, essentially it was you received your Series 63 and 65 together, and you get the Series 66. So the 7 and 66 are kind of what most full-blown brokers would have. Now other people would get more, get their CFA, kind of they would get the Series 9 compliance. So there was other things you can add on to that, but I always felt that the industry, Series 7 and 66 is kind of the backbone in the big boy league, okay? Okay, so first thing, understand the history. I'm going to give you all information that's firsthand and unbiased, and some of you all are not going to like what I'm going to say. Some of you all are going to find it racist. Some of you all are going to find it very bitter against low income, poor people, bottom feeders. You're going to hear things in the story that may make you very angry or uncomfortable, but I'm going to tell you uncensored the things that went on in a brokerage firm in the heart of the financial collapse, and also when I was doing some magic collecting and investing on the side in the middle of this era. So be aware, a lot of these things that happen are historical, are controversial, and well, they don't feel good. So understand that up front, everybody. Now, so first we have to go very, very far back. So some of the stuff you guys aren't going to like, and a lot of things you just think I'm going to be full of shit, and some of you guys aren't going to believe, but I'm going to tell you what I feel is the most accurate, full story of somebody who worked, too close to the fire, and was working at a financial firm when they collapsed in 08 and the federal government came in and Bank of America had to buy us out. I was there. Now, where do we start? So, 2008 was a mortgage crisis. It was a banking crisis. Essentially, mortgage-backed securities, subprime loans, and excessive commissions, lending, and just free money in free tendies led to the downfall and to the extreme nature of the collapse that caused 2008. Rich people, Wall Street people, and wealthy people did not really pay the high price that normal, hardworking Americans and normal people paid. This type of collapse in 2008 skewed the bad things that happened to regular people and protected wealthier people from downside fallout. I know, shock face, right? So understand, in the 90s, a long, long time ago, under the presidency of Bill Clinton, we had a roaring 90s. Now, depending where you were and what you did for a living, you will agree with that or you will disagree. That's irrelevant. The roaring 90s under Bill Clinton's presidency, under the Democrats, was very, very successful. It is what it is. Wall Street, growth, technological revolutions, technological innovations, and overall growth of the S&P 500, and growth and evolving of human beings in America on the Western culture was very, very rapid, very, very successful. And Wall Street made billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars, were made, created out of thin air, and passed around. Understand in politics, because this is one of the reasons you guys will get a better understanding of why I am so anti-political and I just can't stand Democrats, Republicans, and the whole system. So understand, in these 90s, rules and regulations were passed to help low-income, poor people, and black people get housing and get out from renting in low-income subsidies. The government felt and was pitched to the government and to the public that allowing, loosening lending standards and getting special programs to allow people who are poor, have no assets, not as educated, to get access to owning real estate was a good path to place that bottom level of society on a path to start building wealth and getting them out of being in poverty. This was the template used in the 90s to shift regulation and banking standards. I know. Ugh, right? Now, a lot of this stuff was passed and went through. Special programs were created for lending and getting minorities, black people, Hispanic people, Asians, different people from around the world, specifically non-white terminology, were used in this programs to allow lending to be easier for approval for these type of people in United States of America. Now, when this passed, what ended up happening next was, well, Wall Street went after it. Okay? Now, when Wall Street sees opportunities, they will exploit it. Like you guys hear me say on this channel, water flows in the path of least resistance. That's how water goes down a hill. And, well, money does the same thing. Money always chases the easiest and largest returns, right? We talk about that. So what ends up happening is Wall Street was very well aware of these changing lending standards that were targeted to non-white, minority, black people, different cultures and races. And Wall Street went after this kind of thing because they saw dollar signs. So what happens next is now we leave the 90s and we go into the 2000s. Obviously in 2000 we had Y2K. You have the dot-com bubble crash in March of 2000 after Y2K. Then you have, of course, September 11th, which was another ripple end in the sand. Many historical people who focus on culture and history believe the 90s did not end in Y2K. It is argued that the 90s came to an end on September 11th because it was a cultural shift on how we viewed things, how we became very anti-Muslim, Islamic, Middle East, and the entire cultural footprint and landscape evolved in this point in time. So, as we left the 90s and went into this era, banks and Wall Street were expanding their mortgage departments, their lending, and loosening standards. As you all know, just like a gambler, when you slowly make shifts or slowly bet more money or slowly ease your requirements, your prerequisites, or as you ease your standards slowly over a long period of time, it's not noticeable when you don't feel it. Okay? When you don't feel things, you're easier going with change. So, I told you guys it's going to be a fucking nasty video. So, by about the early 2000s, you had financial firms like Washington Mutual, Wachovia, regional banks, and you had mortgage lenders, Big Boy, the world-famous countrywide fucking financial, owned and ran by the scumbag Angelo Mazzillo. Never forget those fucking names. So, I apologize for the curse words in this video. So as we went to the 2000s, these financial institutions, including brokerage firms that I worked at, like Merrill Lynch, had departments, and Bank of America. So all banks started to realize the amount of money involved with these financial weapons of mass destruction, also known as mortgage-backed securities. So mortgages were lending and being moved at such a high rate. Wall Street began to expand the packaging and how they packaged and sold mortgages. So let me break it down to make it simple and enjoyable for you guys. Essentially, you walk into your bank. You and your family say, I want to buy this house for $100,000. The bank says, sure, sign here, do this, put 20% down. So we'll give you a mortgage for $80,000. You only have to put $20,000 in, 30-year mortgage, pay $500 a month plus your escrows and whatever, and you're good to go. That is how the system normally was for most of history in modern society. By the 2000s, it shifted away from, back in the day, if you didn't get a mortgage by putting 20% down, it was unheard of. So then as standards shifted, families were only required to put 10% down. Wall Street started to learn that families couldn't afford 10%. They didn't have the money because people were broke. And of course, minorities, non-white people, had the least amount of assets and essentially had no fucking money. So Wall Street and these banks decide, hey, we need to start getting more creative. And they started to drop the standards, eventually down to nothing down, or the infamous 3% down payment. And they started to create the ninja loans, and they started to create the silly shit. Ninja, of course, stands for the no income, no job, no job asset verification system. They created these new programs that were targeted to low-income parts of cities around the United States. Historically, inner cities in, areas, and trust me, they know where the demographics are. So pretty much in cities, in the part of the city that were concentrated in black people. That's what the banks did. Now, what they did next was they raised the commission structure to the people selling these products. So they got people in boardrooms and salespeople for mortgages. And I'm leaving a lot out, but I don't really want to make this a 10-hour video. So then what ended up happening was they started giving massive fat-ass bonuses to issuing and selling people mortgages. So essentially, some goofball out of college could come in there at 18 years old, pretty much sell if they sold 5 mortgages to a bunch of people who couldn't afford it by knocking on their door, no joke, folks. They purchased surveys and mailing lists that literally they filtered the mailing list to black people, single black women with multiple kids, women who were divorced, black and white and all races, and women who had no jobs, black and white people that pretty much were poor. They targeted the mailing list, and then they would target specific zip codes in areas that they knew people didn't want to be in, to target that we could lend you money to get a house and get you out of there. So they engaged in tremendous amounts of very, very, what I consider very corrupt behavior. And yes, it was targeted, and it was used as a slant and angle for, race-related things, and targeted towards women versus men. It was targeted to categories of people they knew were less educated, and they could pull fast ones over. In other words, they were more likely to sign and not understand what's going on. It was a deliberate filter. Like, they literally filtered out people who graduated high school. They would filter out lists if you went to college. If you ever owned a car or owned a house, they'd filter you out. Like, this shit gets fucking crazy, okay? So, you factor that kind of business model in. You factor in a bunch of car salesmen going into a corporate banking building and told them every single time you get one of these people who are uneducated, have no income, to have no idea what's going on, you get them to sign on here and promise to get them out of the ghetto. And when you do that every time, instead of a couple $100 bonus, $1,000, no. They were issuing $5, $10, $15, $20,000 bonuses, depending on the size and terms of the loan. There were fucking people that showed up to the office, and they were 18-year-olds that would literally rent a fucking limo with a driver to show up to a call center and be dropped off out front, and then literally get off work. It would tell the limo driver to be out front at a certain time with like 2 escorts or 2 strippers. Like, this shit was insane. It was real. And it was it was so ridiculous, it doesn't sound real. So, of course, this was in an era with very real. So if you don't know, pre-2005, Sarbox didn't exist. Sarbanes-Oxley, you can Google the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, banking regulation, everything that kicked in around 04, 05, 06 range to tighten and start, well, putting an end to this bad behavior. So we're going to pause the story right here. As of right now, I've kind of told you some backpedaling of these things. So essentially what you can see is the federal government, Democrats, Republicans, pass legislation and do things because they want to help low-income people get out of poverty, which on the surface is a great fucking thing. Everybody would agree to that. And on the surface, they knew everybody would agree to it. But on the underlying underground data, the iceberg of the data of this, the reality is, no, people who do not qualify and cannot pay the bills or the taxes or the upkeep or the utilities, the increased everything, they should not be owning property. Black, white, young, old, gay, straight, 5 penises, 1 leg, 1 eyeball. Not everybody is an investor. Not everybody should be a business owner. And not everybody should own a piece of real estate. It requires responsibility, stress, upkeep, and discipline. And quite frankly, there are times, I'll be honest with you guys, this is coming from a guy who's wealthy and has a fuck ton of real estate. Sometimes there are moments that people out there who don't have to deal with all that, there's value to not being tied down, dealing with all that shit. Just live a life that's free and happy. That's a different video. So what I'm telling you all so far is the backstory template. So by the time we start to approach 2008, by 2006, things were getting shaky. By 2007, there were inside people that already knew things were in trouble. By 2008, as you know, history is made, and the markets across the world did not bottom until March of 2009 when the S&P 500 hit the devil's low of 666. What are the fucking odds of that, right? So, on the surface, what started in the 90s, adjusted regulation and pitched things to help minorities own property, get them out of subsidized Section 8 type of urban development housing, increase quality of life, mostly targeted to minorities and black people. That was the pitch. The reality is, Wall Street pushed it, agreed with it, because they knew they would make hundreds and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And they did. And it came true, and they were right. Now, what they were not right, and what everybody got wrong, is how short-lived it would be from passing regulation in the late 90s, executing in the early 2000s, causing a full-blown fucking nightmare by 07, 08. Nobody knew the rate of speed that it would took place. The world-famous Michael Burry, with The Big Short, even he knew, but he did not know the timing of it. That's why he was off by many, many months and lost a lot of money until it hit big for him. Now, of course, Michael Burry, which again, if you want another video on this, comment below. Michael Burry is like fucking Richard Garfield. He got one really good thing in life really right, and he's a legend for it. After that, he's a fucking he fucked everything else up in his life. He's gotten everything wrong. He treats people bad, and he's cocky. If you want a video on that, I'll make a video. The only thing I'm going to say in this video is my friend Brian at Tulare Community College did an interview with Richard Garfield recently. And it was the most insulting piece of shit fucking video I've ever seen. Brian laid his fucking heart out. It was the nicest guy. And Richard Garfield treated that man like a piece of shit. And Richard Garfield, because he got one thing right, agreed to a fucking interview with Brian just so he could pitch a new game. And again, Richard Garfield's made fucking 50 other games that have all failed. And he's cocky about it. And literally used Brian. Brian's telling, the professor's telling him all these amazing stories and bleeding his heart out as a fucking real human. And Richard if you want a video on that, I'll make a separate video. Unbelievable Richard Garfield treated him in that video. I couldn't fucking believe it. Anyways, all to get his fucking pitch his new game that's going to fail anyways, fucking asshole. So, anyways, all this stuff is very dirty and very messy from the past. That's why I don't like talking about it, because the reality is it's uncomfortable, it's bad, it's corrupt on all levels, and it just doesn't, it's not fun to talk about. That's why I don't do these videos very often. So by the time 2008 rolled around, obviously underwriting all these loans and mortgages to people who had no jobs, and again, the memes, and yeah, I worked in a restaurant in college. And actually, fuck it, I'll tell you. I don't think they're even around. There was a couple years in my college time. I worked at Buca di Beppo. It's Italian, I think it is, for Joe's Basement. It's an Italian restaurant. I worked there in college. That was the restaurant I worked at. That most of them went bankrupt. They got bought out. There used to be Buca stock. It even went to zero, got delisted. And I was a server, bartender, all that stuff. I mostly waited table. I did all that stuff in college. I was there for over 2 years. And I used most of my tips, and I bought, well, old magic cards like an idiot. Obviously, family and ex-girlfriends and coworkers made fun of me for it. Well, life works out in funny ways, and people can fuck themselves. So, in the future, I look back. I remember this. We had this dishwasher in the back of the restaurant. Super cool dude. Super nice. I used to talk to him every night. When I clean and bust the tables, I'd go back there and scrape the food in the garbage, and I put the plates for the dishwasher. If you ever worked in a restaurant, you know. It's hot as shit, it's humid as shit, smells like shit, everything's gross. That's, if you know, you know. Hashtag if you know, you know below. Tell me. Tell me if you know what I'm talking about in the back of these restaurants. And I used to talk to the dishwasher, and this was 2005. And he goes, Rudy, dude, I got 7 condos now, and I'm about to close on 3 more. I'm going to have 10 condos, and I'm going to flip them all. I may keep one for myself. This was a guy making $7 an hour. No education. Had almost $2 million in loans with minimum wage, who couldn't even pay the minimum payment on his own things if he didn't flip them in time or rent them out in time. And I remember in that moment thinking, wow, dude, you're going to be hitting it big in life. And I'm just waiting tables and, buying my cards and my magic cards. And this dishwasher said, Rudy, dude, you got to fucking stop buying those fucking kids' cards, and you got to get condos, start flipping real estate like me. And I said, I don't know, man. I don't know enough about it, and the cards make me happy. I think I had brought to the restaurants, I brought one of my cards I bought. I bought a PSA 10, I think Alpha icy manipulator, and I paid like $200 for it. I showed him I bought this Alpha 10 icy manipulator for $200. And he was just like, dude, I mean, it's a cool picture. It's got a little orb and lightning in the background. But he goes, you bought a fucking card for a kid's card game for $200. Why would you buy that fucking PSA 10 Alpha icy manipulator? And I said, I just like it. It makes me happy. And I think one day it'll probably be worth like $300-$400. I'll be double my money. And anyways, so there were signs, and people who had no business doing what they were doing it. So when we get to 2008 now, everybody's angry at everybody. Main Street's angry at Wall Street for corruption and ruining the country and causing it. The government bails out the banks, which makes normal working Americans angry. Where's our bailout? And everything just gets shitty and messy. Millions of people lose their jobs. Millions of people lose their houses. And the funny thing about it is, besides the mortgage departments, when I was at Merrill at this time, I was on the brokerage floor with all the brokers and everything, and we were still hiring. Not a single person was laid off or anything, and my income didn't go up or down. Actually, at that time, I remember in 08, 09, I was buying some of my first beta PSA 10s and Alpha PSA 10s. I remember I bought my Alpha PSA 10 Mox Pearl. And I couldn't believe it, and that was the time I spent, I think it was $1,000 or $1,900 for a PSA 10 Alpha Mox Pearl, and I brought it to work one time on the floor, and I remember showing people because I was proud of it, and it didn't go well. People just kind of ridiculed me on it. I never bought another card, never brought it up again, and I remember looking at all this stuff, and I remember all the corporate people and the executives too, I think the most interesting too is the higher up the food chain. Like I said in videos, I made a video 8 years ago on this channel talking about it. The executives and the CEO of Merrill Lynch at the time, his name was John Thain. And I remember there were other people talking about it. And I remember walking over to these guys, and they were all laughing, having a good time. They all went out to lunch or something, I don't know, or we're going to have some company dinner thing, whatever. And they were talking about how bad the market is and everything, and they were talking about their own accounts. At the time, most of these guys who were worth like hundreds of millions, like their account didn't even drop. Like they literally, all they had were individual tax-exempt muni bonds that had, every 6 months or every year they were laddered with maturities, and they didn't lose any money at all. They just made their 3-4% a year or 5% a year back then, and it was tax exempt. And they had 10, 20, $30 million accounts, and they just collected their 4-5% a year that was tax exempt, and they didn't give a fuck what happened with anything else. And in the meantime, the flat screen TVs on the wall, I'd walk down the hallway, and it would say like 600 clients on hold to play stock trades. And I was going, and of course, every single person was just sell, sell, sell. One in every 500 people would have the balls to buy, but nobody was buying. Nobody was fucking buying. The buy orders were so few. It would probably be like every 500 to 1,000 sell orders, there was one buy order of some crazy mofo taco eating idiot. But, the kicker internally, there was a lack of anger and concern on the Wall Street side of people who worked in it, because there was a lot of blame that the black people and minorities, they didn't want to get a job and pay their bills, so of course they caused the foreclosures, and they lost it all themselves and fuck them type attitude. There was a lot of that I heard. And there was a lot of no fucks given kind of thing, because, well, everybody was still making their paychecks and getting their bonuses, and it didn't impact them. And as with everything, for some reason, when things go wrong, they blame poor people. And I remember they even said that in the Big Short and some of the Wall Street movies. I don't know why that is, but it's true. It's like, well, they were fucking poor. They couldn't pay their bills, so, hey, they got what they deserved. And I'm like, yeah, but if the economy collapses and the jobs go away and everybody loses their job, they were paying their bills. But you fucked it up by selling these financial weapons of mass destruction to people who shouldn't even be touching them, and they didn't know what they were signing, because you pretty much gave them a 100-page thing and said, oh, just click this button to DocuSign, or sign this bottom page, you get a free house. Well, what are these other 99 pages? Bro, don't worry about it, man. Come on, you want a family? You want to live in the ghetto, or do you want to live in this nice new neighborhood? So it led to was it the low-income black family that couldn't pay their bill? Is it their fault? Is it the financial, complicated instruments that were sold to these people? Is it their fault for making something? Is it the advisor's fault for not disclosing it to the person? Is it the government's fault for allowing the laws to be changed 15 years earlier quietly, to allow these people to make the billions in bonuses to sell products that shouldn't have ever been created? It is so fucking yin and yang spiderwebbed. That's why today, a lot of you all now try to get a house or buy a car, and you get frustrated because banks give you a hard time, and underwriters ask for this, and bank statements, and your ratios, your income to debt. That's why now, in 2025, things are very strict. That's why now, no matter what the internet tells you, we are not repeating a 2008. The internet loves to compare every downturn in the stock market to the next 2008. And yes, eventually there will be another crash like 2008. But it could be in tomorrow morning, or be fucking 30 years from now. Okay? But the template that was in place to allow 2008 to happen doesn't exist anymore. the instruments and how they were sold and the regulation that was removed these things are gone. So you cannot have an identical repeat of 2008. So when you hear people online saying, oh, this is 2008's coming again. No. That tells me you weren't there. And that tells me that you're just being internet drama trying to fucking make other people miserable so that they live a life of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and they don't fulfill maybe the full life they could have because they're scared. That's the stuff that makes me angry. You guys hear on this channel all the time, I bring up the negativity, I bring up the internet, I bring up everybody who wants bad. I mean, I have to put my own videos on this channel, like yesterday or something, the day before. I had to put a video, Hasbro reported earnings. I had to label the video like collapse and Hasbro and danger and magic failing. Otherwise, literally the views on the same damn video and conversation, instead of being 50 to 100,000, will be like 10,000. Because it's not negative. And this goes back to exactly what I'm talking about in 2008. Because now, everybody uses and points to 2008. People blame black people. They blame poor people. Oh, then the mainstream public blames Wall Street. And then Wall Street blames the government for changing it. And then the government blames lack of regulation wasn't done in time. And then it's like this fucking Spider-Man finger thing everywhere. And in my answer, I'll say it. I mean, Rudy, am I getting canceled from this video? Am I already canceled? Am I losing my sponsors? Am I losing my sponsors in this video? I don't have any sponsors. Remember folks, my channel, I don't have anything to sell you guys. If you want to buy magic cards, you can, or collectibles, we can have fun, but I don't have a get-rich-quick program to sell you. I don't have a financial plan to sell you all. And I don't have 10 steps of business and hustle, and I don't have any of that. You guys watch my videos. I have a Patreon that you guys talk to me, and you buy cards from me. That's what I do. And the reality is here, I think everybody was at fault. I don't think anybody had clean hands. The government's corrupt. All that shit they did. The banks and advisors for creating these instruments, pushing employees and college grads and people to pump this shit out and promise them dangling big bonuses and exotic cards and promising them escorts and hot chicks and you do this and you get that. All that stuff. It leads to bad behavior. So they're at fault. Okay? Pitching and targeting people in certain metrics and filtering out people who have too much money or have too much of it. They've owned a house before. Or wait, you've been to college? Don't talk to them. Like filtering and targeting a certain type of human is the ultimate definition of actual corruption and racism and literally, I don't know, whatever the isms are. Like that is targeted. That is exactly the real thing. Or no, Nazis. Everybody says Nazis nowadays. But that is the actual definition of filtering humans to target the weakest or most vulnerable. Like that is the most corrupt thing you can do. And then you have the regular working people. Young, old, black, white, trans, straight, gay, old, I don't know, 2 heads, 3 balls, whatever the fuck, who cares? You have humans in America. And well, some humans, and a lot of humans, they are lazy. They are dumb. You hear me say on this channel all the time, I call people Timmies. People are dumb. A portion of Americans, a larger portion of America, is uneducated. Is straight up fucking stupid. And some of it is those people's fault for not just wanting to, they have no drive. Some of it's not their fault. They didn't have a choice. They were born into they were played a shitty hand. They got one magic card, and guess what? It's a Black Lotus, you get $10,000. It's not. It's a penny. It's a fucking mountain that you can't climb. I'm done with this. I don't want to talk anymore.